Hey everybody, it's Lynn Hayes here. Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new, welcome. Glad you joined me here today. In this week's video, we'll be talking about the astrology from February 1st through the 8th in the year 2021. The first thing we need to cover is that Mercury has just turned retrograde, and I'll post a link in the description box to a video that I made about Mercury retrograde if you want to go a little deeper and learn more about that. But Mercury is retrograde for about 3 weeks, 4 times a year. It's a pretty common occurrence. When Mercury is retrograde, often there are communication glitches. There are sometimes equipment failures. Sometimes things don't go according to plan, or according to our plan anyway. So when Mercury is retrograde, which it will be for the next 3 weeks, we need to be a little more careful with everything involving communication, equipment, any kind of transmission of information becomes much more important. We must pay closer attention and make sure that all of the details are taken care of. Even with our best efforts, though, sometimes there are glitches, sometimes things do fall apart, sometimes there are surprises that we hadn't anticipated, but in any case, we'll be prepared. We know that Mercury is retrograde. We know that these things are more likely. What I would rather people not do, though, is become very afraid of Mercury retrograde, decide they shouldn't leave the house, they shouldn't schedule anything, that they just need to be very cautious. That's not really a great way to live. We don't want to have astrology fill us with fear. We want astrology to illuminate us and educate us so that we can work with these energies more successfully. And when we're talking about Mercury retrograde, that means just being aware and knowing that these things can happen. If you have to enter into a contract, if you have to plan a trip, don't be afraid to do it. Just try to be as careful as you can to make sure that all the details are taken care of. One thing that's very significant that will be happening over the next couple of weeks is a big stellium in Aquarius. We had one in 1962, and there was one in the 1990s also. The one in 1962 was particularly powerful because there were 7 planetary bodies, including the sun and the moon. And it was also a solar eclipse at that time. And anybody that was born between February 4th and 7th has this 7 planetary body, Aquarius stellium, embedded in their chart. As this video is posted on February 1st, Venus will have just moved into Aquarius. And at that time, there will be 6 planets in Aquarius. So it's not quite as intensely Aquarian as the 1962 stellium, but still 6 planets, including both the sun and the moon, is a pretty strong influence in one sign. And in addition to the 7 planets, we also have the asteroid Pallas Athena, which has been in Aquarius for the last couple of months. Pallas Athena is the asteroid of divine intelligence, higher intelligence, the kind of intelligence that kind of sprinkles down to us from the heavens. We don't really know where it comes from, and it helps us to widen the scope of our wisdom and our knowledge. And Aquarius generally is really all about knowledge. It's an air sign, so it has to do with thinking and communication. But it also, with the modern influence of Uranus, it also has this other layer of meaning, which is all about change, innovation, paradigm busting. And really, I do believe that there's a portal of energies that open anytime there's a big Uranian event. So in 1962, that kind of opened the door for the Uranus-Pluto conjunction, which occurred from 1962 to 1968. And that period, the 60s, was certainly a major force for the kind of social change that we've had really ever since then. And as we're moving through this doorway from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, these sorts of influences become even more important as they open these doorways to thinking about the world in a very different way. There's no doubt that the world that we live in now is very different from the 19th century, the 18th century, even the 20th century. The world has completely changed and is continuing to change. And this is the domain of Uranus. Aquarius has a traditional ruler, which is Saturn. Saturn was the ruler of Aquarius for thousands of years. And now we have this added layer of Uranus. Uranus doesn't replace Saturn. We still have the sort of coldness and the hard reason of Saturn when we're talking about Aquarius, but then this added layer of innovation and awakening that we have with Uranus. This very strong Aquarian influence will be in effect for the first couple of weeks of February. Then we have the new moon in Aquarius on February 11th, which means we'll not only have the 6 planets in Aquarius, plus Pallas, the asteroid, in Aquarius. We'll also have the moon in Aquarius, and it will be a new moon in Aquarius, a new time of change. So during these first 2 weeks, you may be inspired and motivated to think about ways in which you can bring some of this new energy into your own life. I've been talking about this for a long time, and certainly all through last year when we had that heavy Capricorn influence and we were being restricted and our world was sort of collapsing in on itself. And now we have this huge Aquarian influence, which is all about change. So where last year we sort of had this breakdown phase, which we often have when we're dealing with Pluto and Saturn, which were conjunct last year, now we have this strong Aquarian influence, which is about creating change. It's about breaking out of old patterns that we know don't serve us anymore. For some of us, it's very hard to break up those old patterns. It's hard to break out of traditions that are comfortable, that we've followed for many years and our parents before us. But this is really a time when this must happen, and this Aquarius energy will help to make that a little bit easier for us. That's really the end of the major influences. So now let's talk about the week ahead. On Monday, February 1st, we start the week with the moon in Virgo until it enters Libra at 9:25 a.m. Eastern Time. Please adjust for your own locality. We also have a strong and challenging square from the Sun in Aquarius to Mars in Taurus on that day. Solar aspects only last for a couple of days. This would have started to build Sunday, January 31st. But here we have the Aquarius Sun shining the light of change and a challenging or strong aspect to Mars, the planet of action. Mars is in Taurus, where action doesn't come that easily. Taurus is a fixed sign, the bull, very placid in the field until somebody stirs it up and then it takes off and can run very fast. That's sort of like Mars in Taurus. It kind of sneaks up on us. We think, oh, everything is just comfortable. Then here comes the Sun triggering a square to Mars, which after all is the fire planet. So this can be a day where we can have a lot more physical energy, where we can have more motivation, more inspiration. But we have to kind of be aware that this is happening. It's like the sun might be shining outside. It might be a beautiful day. But if I stay in my house with the curtains closed, I'll never know. This day, Monday, February 1st, there's some potential for a lot of action and activity that can help to spur us and inspire. We also have Venus entering Aquarius that day at about 9:05 a.m. When Venus is in Aquarius, which it will be for a few weeks, our relationships, our interactions with others, which is what Venus rules, take on a different quality. There's a great deal more fairness. There's a great deal more attention to the needs of the collective. Now, you might think that this means that the world will start to see things the way you do, and that doesn't really happen because everybody has a different idea of what's fair. What you and I think is fair and what we hope the whole world will see as fair, somebody else may feel is oppression or favoring some other group and not them. So that's the problem. Everybody thinks Aquarius is all equality and social justice for everybody, and I would love to believe that this is true. We all want this to be true, but because everybody has a different idea of what the truth is, especially right now, we can't really expect that things are going to go as smoothly as we might hope. Since we are moving into a very Aquarian, a very Uranian time on many different levels, we have the Aquarius stellium, we have Saturn in Aquarius, which will be squaring Uranus for much of the year. This idea of what is fair and what is justice is going to be the prevailing wind for the year. And as a result, underneath this is a great deal of civil unrest as we try to come to some agreement about what is fair. That's really a theme of 2021. But in the meantime, Here we have Venus in Aquarius, which is more detached. It's not a passionate, romantic Venus by any means. It's more a Venus that cherishes friendship above romance, that cherishes idealism above passion and drama. And because the moon is in Libra, it will be interacting harmoniously in a trine to all of the Aquarius planets. So the moon being in Libra, which is very focused on relationships and relating and connecting, finding balance and finding harmony, that's a very good influence for the first couple of days of the week. On Tuesday, there really aren't any planetary aspects. We just have the Libra moon, which is still making its way through the Aquarius planets, including a trine to the sun. And when the moon is in a trine to the sun, that's just a general good day for emotional support. The moon representing our feelings in Libra, where we look for balance, where we look for equanimity, and in a trine to the Aquarius sun. So there's a lot of air, there's potential for a lot of communication here. But also the moon is in a trine to the North Node, which is in Gemini. This is a very brief aspect, but because the nodes are instrumental when we're talking about eclipses, when we have an eclipse, it's because the sun and the moon are very tightly conjunct one of the lunar nodes. And the nodes, of course, have to do with the direction of our fate from the past to the future. So anytime the moon interacts with the nodes in any kind of way, there's a little bit of a push. There's a little bit of a course correction or a push in the direction of our fate, of our destiny, of our higher destiny, not the destiny necessarily that we're creating for ourselves, because certainly we do create our own fate to a degree, but this is the overall destiny that's always pulling us towards the future, what we're supposed to grow to, what we're supposed to let go of so that we can make that growth happen. With the moon and a trine to the North Node, there is a potential that something could take place on Tuesday that could help to give you a little boost in a forward direction. On Wednesday, February 3rd, the moon moves into Scorpio at 9:14 a.m. Eastern Time. The shift from the moon into Scorpio is a positive one in many ways. The moon, after all, represents the heart, the emotional heart, not the physical heart, which is represented by the sun. But the moon represents the emotional hearts, our vulnerability, our feelings at the deepest level. And when the moon is in an air sign like Libra, we're not always aware of our feelings. We may be a little out of touch with them. But when the moon moves into Scorpio, which is that passionate water, Scorpio is ruled by Mars, the fire planet, and Scorpio really takes us deeply into our feelings. And again, this can be somewhat difficult if feelings are an area of your life that are somewhat uncomfortable. And what will make the passage of the moon in Scorpio more difficult now is because it will be squaring all of the Aquarius planets. We have 6 planets in Aquarius, and as the moon goes through Scorpio, it's going to square every one of them. I'm not going to break that down because it'll just sound like a lot of words. But essentially, on Wednesday and Thursday, February 3rd and 4th, with the Scorpio moon squaring all of these different planets, just watch for some emotional disruption. The feelings are intense, they're powerful. There might be some internal discomfort, especially when the moon is in a square to Saturn, which it will be, which could cause a bit of sadness or depression for a few hours. The square from the moon to Saturn will be in the later afternoon on Wednesday, February 3rd. And that will be followed by an opposition from the Scorpio moon to Uranus and Taurus. That can feel very disruptive. The moon is still sensitive, even in Scorpio. Uranus, remember, the disruptor. Moon and Uranus, not very good allies. This is about 9 p.m. Eastern Time, so depending on your time zone, perhaps you'll be asleep if you're in Europe. Expect to be woken up, maybe. But in any case, there could be some disruption on the evening of Wednesday, February 3rd. And things don't ease up quite yet on Thursday. On Thursday, February 4th, that Scorpio moon will oppose Mars. And again, the moon is not a natural ally with Mars either. That can feel irritating. We might feel some anger, especially if there's any unresolved anger or anything under the surface. It could come out. That's at about 9:50 a.m. on Thursday. And then the Scorpio moon will also square the sun around noon that day, a little after noon. But then later in the day, the Scorpio moon aligns in a harmonious trine with Neptune. That'll happen at 6:11 p.m. Eastern Time. The Scorpio moon harmonizing with Neptune and Pisces is very creative, very emotional. That helps to bring a sense of peace. It helps us to feel more integrated emotionally. The passions are soothed because they have a clear and more direct expression. On Friday, February 5th, the energies start to build for a conjunction from Venus to Saturn. They're both in Aquarius. They're both somewhat detached. They're not very tolerant of other people's feelings, particularly because it's more about the facts. It's more about the reasonable approach to a situation. This can feel sometimes a little bit lonely when Venus and Saturn conjoin. It's not really a warm and fuzzy alignment. And very early on February at 1:26 a.m. Eastern Time, so if you're in the west coast of the US, you may still be awake when this happens. The Scorpio moon will form a square to Mercury. And that lunar square to the planet of the mind can sometimes be disruptive for thinking and communication. But it's a pretty quick aspect, and I don't think that it will give you a lot of trouble. The Venus-Saturn influence, which also isn't that strong because Venus only lasts for a day or so, but that's probably the strongest influence it's building on that day. And the moon's going to move into Sagittarius at 12:16 p.m. Eastern Time. The Sagittarius moon just naturally feels more buoyant. It's more expansive. Now that sounds better, and in my belief, nothing in astrology is good and nothing is bad. Sagittarius can be happier, but also not very disciplined. It can be very self-involved. It can sometimes not take life seriously enough, but coming on the heels of the Scorpio moon, the moon moving into Sagittarius can feel like a lift. And that's what we have on Friday after 12:16 Eastern Time. While the moon is in Sagittarius, it's going to harmonize in a series of sextiles, a 60-degree aspect, which is very supportive and a little bit exciting to all of the Aquarius planets over the next couple of days. This should help to really integrate. It should help us to feel more optimistic and more positive, and it will generally be a good time to solve any problems that might have come up earlier in the week. Sagittarius is very optimistic, and when the moon is in Sagittarius, it's easier to see the positive side of life. Again, that's not always good if we ignore the challenges, but it can, like I said, it can give us a nice lift. On Saturday, we have that conjunction of Venus to Saturn. This isn't the most sociable aspect. It's not really that great for interpersonal relationships. It's more a good time to spend some time alone and get to know yourself a little bit. However, that said, Venus is in a sextile to Chiron, which is in Aries. So any issues that come up, or if there's some place that you're stuck, or if there's some place that you feel stuck in a relationship with another person, Chiron can bring its healing energies to help solve that problem, to help bring any issues to the surface so that they can be dealt with in a positive, harmonious way, because it's a sextile. And Venus is also starting to align in a square to Uranus. When Venus in Aquarius, which is ruled by Uranus, is in a square to Uranus, we call that a double whammy. I don't know who originated this, but that's what I call it. When we have several astrological configurations that are echoes of each other, that's telling us we need to sit up and pay attention. So we have Venus in Aquarius, detached, reasonable, rational, in a square, a challenging aspect to Uranus, the planet of change, the planet of detachment, the planet of innovation and new ideas. This, again, not a great day for relationships, not a great day to have some sort of a passionate emotional entanglement. Aquarius is very detached, really likes to step back a little bit and see the bigger picture. This does make it a good day for problem solving in any kind of relationships. That can be parent-child relationships or work teams when we have Venus in Aquarius, and remember that's going to be for a few weeks. It's a very good time to have a little bit more perspective than we might normally have. On Sunday, February 7th, very early in the morning, about 1:16 Eastern Time, the moon harmonizes in a sextile to Mercury. This is such a subtle aspect, I doubt that you will use it, but if you are awake at that time, if you are any kind of person that works with words, a writer, a reader, anything having to do with communication, would be very positive for a few hours around that time. Then the moon is going to move into Capricorn later that day at around 3:51 p.m. Eastern Time. When the moon moves into Capricorn, we become more serious. We start to look more seriously at the practical aspects of our life. And that's going to be the theme for the next couple of days. Also on Sunday, the energies are starting to build for a conjunction from the Sun to Mercury at 8:47 a.m. Eastern Time. Many traditional astrologers think that when the Sun conjoins Mercury, it's a dangerous aspect. Mercury is swallowed up by the beams of the Sun. It's literally burning up by the Sun's light. I personally have never seen this to be a problem. Clients that I have who have the Sun conjunct Mercury, even when it's very tight, within a degree, are extremely intelligent. They have brilliant minds. And when the Sun is conjunct Mercury, it's illuminating the mental realm. So this can be a very good time for words and communication. Now, Mercury is retrograde, and it's retrograde in Aquarius, which is a fixed sign. When Mercury retrogrades through a fixed sign, it can be more difficult. Fixed signs don't adapt to change very easily. Mercury retrograde is all about change. Might ask us to redo something. We might discover that something that we put into place has to be restored or remodeled or reworked in some way. But then here comes the Sun conjunct Mercury, and that actually is a shift in the Mercury retrograde cycle in any case. So I see that as a potentially positive experience with the Sun conjunct Mercury. And this is on Monday at 8:47 a.m. And we'll have another video then. So once again, as always, thank you so much for being here with me today. I very much appreciate it. Leave me questions or comments below if you have any, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week.